Hi, everyone. I had a question posed to me last night, and so I thought I'd kind of respond to it here. Um, they forwarded me a post that was explaining the Statute of Westminster 1931 and the Constitution Act and the BNA Act. And while it was all technically true, there's still a few things that were still missing. So I just want to explain it in more detail. The Statute of Westminster 1931 was a statute that was passed in British Parliament, and I believe it was Section 4, don't quote me on it, but Section 4 essentially said that any statutes or regulations out of Britain no longer applied to the colony. And this document, many people now use as evidence that Canada is now free to then pass their own constitution, but no constitution has actually been passed because the people actually haven't voted on it. They tried, like if Meech Lake or the Charlottetown Accords passed, then they would have had an actual constitution, but both of those failed. What most people don't also realize is that the Constitution Act of 1982 rescinded Section 4 of the Statute of Westminster, which meant that statutes from Britain again apply. Now, all of this can be confusing, but if you look into history a little bit, especially in Alberta, after the Statute of Westminster 1931 was passed, Premier Aberhart started exercising Alberta's sovereignty and created his own currency. Alberta had its own currency and was moving in that direction when Mackenzie King, the prime minister at the time, started fighting back. Now, in my view, all of this is really irrelevant because what's actually happening is people are swearing an oath of fealty to the king, which brings legitimacy to it all. So, I captured a screenshot back in the mid-2000s of the Governor General's website saying that the Governor General is the de facto head of state. De facto means illegitimate, but in effect. Why is it in effect? Because people are giving their power away to that authority. They're doing it without knowledge, without conscious awareness, but it's still happening. And so now, people are, arguing and debating and, contemplating this question about, Alberta or Western Canada, separating from Canada and being sovereign states. But that's still an illusion. It's bringing in these constitutional arguments that could then bog down the whole conversation, when the reality is that our relationship with the king is feudal in nature, and we give our power away when we participate in it, whether we vote or apply for benefits or privileges or any of that kind of stuff. This is all evidence of that feudal relationship with the king. So people can try to do this legally through petitions and voting and protests and all that kind of stuff, or we can do it lawfully by walking away from the system. And as I said in my previous video, I shared what that process looks like. So I don't have to argue with anybody. I don't have to debate anybody, because in the end, the decision is up to each individual. Um, but if people want to try to save their system, my question is it actually your system? Because in the end, this is all created by the king. This is the nature of feudalism. And feudalism has been around since 1066, when William the Conqueror conquered England. And, if you want evidence of that, the courts actually quote that time period, specifically William the Conqueror in 1066, as the root of their inherited jurisdiction. They don't claim jurisdiction out of the Constitution Act or the B&A Act or any of that kind of stuff. It's inherited through almost 1,000 years of feudalism. And I've also heard some judges say that they will continue to have a job for as long as people vote. Why is that? Because voting and these other actions are a feudal process of surrendering our own personal sovereignty and freedom to the king. And this is us enslaving ourselves. Whether we're consciously aware of it or not is irrelevant. So, people can argue all they want in regards to Statute, Westminster, B&A Act, Constitution Act, or any of that kind of stuff. We don't need statutes and regulations or permission from the king to be free. If we're looking for permission from an authority or looking to fill in a form to be free, then you're not free. Freedom comes from within. It comes through a conscious awareness and a resolute position of realizing the kingdom is within, and we don't need permission from anybody else to be free. This is about governing ourselves, and I don't need a political structure. I don't need permission. I don't need statutes, regulations, or loopholes, or any of that kind of stuff. This is about letting go of this oath of fealty that I swore, and instead standing on my own authority and power. And Carolyn's right. A true sovereign doesn't know paperwork. And the only time I write anything is when I challenge them on their claims. Otherwise, I don't write anything. So I'm hoping this clarifies it. A lot of freedom fighters are looking at this whole talk about sovereignty and that sort of thing as an argument for freedom that can be won through, going through this political process. And this is a false argument. This is a red herring from connecting with the true sovereignty of each individual, because the kingdom is within us. It's not manifested in some sort of fictional construct called a province or a nation or any of that kind of stuff. This is about connecting to the kingdom within each individual. This is a personal, individual journey of healing and reconciliation with spirit, and cleaning up our mess that we made as a result of our own ignorance, and walking away from the fictions. The fictions are all a construct of wicked men anyway. And so if people are arguing about, what Alberta is doing or how to have Alberta being sovereign, they're just as lost as everyone else. So I'm encouraging people to look within and find that sovereignty and freedom within. And we don't need the Statute of Westminster. We don't need the B&A Act or the Constitution Act or any of that kind of stuff to do that. If anything, all of those are just a trap and a red herring to distract people from the truth that it's all from within, and our sovereignty is from within. and finding that place from within is what this journey is all about. And that's why, sitting in the Sacred Heart circles and doing the work and learning how to navigate life without all those fictional constructs is what I've been sharing for 20 years. And I hope that this helps clarify the way I see it anyway. And I hope this helps people to come to terms with doing the internal work rather than getting sucked up in all these arguments online and protests and all that kind of stuff. That's not the way. The way is turning inward and doing that work and finding a way to stand in our sovereign spiritual jurisdiction, and how to then protect that peacefully from those who would make claims against it. And so this is the journey that I'm on, and I thank Harold and Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn, for your beautiful messages. I love you all. I pray this resonates and connects.